Hello everyone. In this video, we will be solving equations using square root property. Before we move on to the example that we have right here, let's have the square root property. The square root property states that let a be any real number. If x squared is equal to a, then x is equal to plus minus square root of a. Now let's have an example to better see this. Let's take this example right here. Suppose I have here let's say x squared is equal to 9. So using this property that we have here, I can go ahead and write that x is actually equal to plus minus square root of 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So then I can go ahead and say that x is actually plus minus 3. So pretty much x is equal to positive 3. That's the first solution. And the other solution is x is equal to negative 3. So there are two values that would work for this equation right here. Now let's check if, let's see if these two equations work from the original equation right here. So let's check the work on the side right here. So I'm going to rewrite this. So we let x is equal to positive 3 first. So then I plug it in. So again, remember when we plug in values or when we check answers, be sure that we change the variable into a parenthesis first before we plug in values. So that would be parentheses squared. Is that equal to 9? So then our x is positive 3. So I put in 3 right there. So 3 squared is equal to 9. And so 9 is equal to 9. So this works if x is positive 3. Now let's see if x is negative 3. So I go ahead and check let x is equal to negative 3. Again, if it's positive 3, it did work. Now let's see if negative 3 would work. So again, the trick in checking our answer if it's correct is to change the variable into a parenthesis before we plug in values. So then I will rewrite that, but instead I will change this x into a parenthesis. So that would be a parenthesis squared. Is that equal to 9? And then the x that we're going to put in right now is a negative 3 because we already did check the positive 3. So this will be a negative 3 right here. Let's see if that would equal each other. Both sides of the equation would equal each other. So negative 3 means that we're supposed to multiply negative 3 2 times. Now, this is where the importance of the trick that I told you that we're supposed to put a parenthesis first before we plug in values. Because if you don't put a parenthesis to the negative 3, then others would think that that is a negative 9. Well, in fact, it's a positive 9. Because we have a negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9 is equal to 9. So then we go ahead and say that both of these solutions right here work to this equation. So this equation has two solutions. Both x is positive 3 and x is negative 3. And that is based on the square root property. Now we are going to use the same concept that we did here with this expression that we have, or with this equation that we have right here. So what are we going to do here again is to follow some steps. So the first step in solving for equations using the square root property is to isolate the squared expression by itself on one side. So in this problem that we have here, we already have the squared equation or expression isolated by itself. So then we go ahead and move on to the second step. Square root both sides and break up the equations into two components, the positive and the negative, then solve. So then the antidote for squared is square root. So I'm just going to rewrite this. So that is negative x plus 3 squared is equal to 4. So then again, the second step is to square root both sides. I'm going to square root this side right here. And then when I square root this side, I will have to put a plus minus square root of 4. So again, that is based on the square root property. So we have to, when we square root both sides, it's going to be a plus and minus a. So I did a plus minus 4. So then we go ahead and cross out the squared and the square root. We are left with negative x plus 3 is equal to plus minus 2, because we have a square root of 4 is 2. So then we go ahead and put the plus and minus in front of it. So then we are going to break up this equations into two components, the positive and the negative. So then I can break this up into two components right here. So the first part would be negative x plus 3 equals positive 2. So that's the first one. And then the other solution would come from the equation negative x plus 3 equals negative 2. So the two components, the positive and the negative. So then we do the math here. It's going to be a minus 3 and minus 3. So then we go ahead and we're left with negative x is equal to, that's going to be 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So we divide both sides by negative 1 because we want a positive x by itself. So then we go ahead and say that our first x is a positive 1. Now we move on to the other equation with the negative 2 right here. So we go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides, minus 3. So then we are left with negative x is equal to negative 5. We want a positive x, so we're dividing negative 1 from both sides. So then we cross the negative 1 out, so we're left with x is equal to positive 5. So we have solved the solution to this equation right here. That's going to be positive 1 and positive 5. Now, the third step is to use the original equation in order that we can check to see if these solutions that we got here are correct. Again, it's very important that we check because sometimes it may not work. So we are going to use the original equation, but we're going to let x is equal to 1. So then I write the original equation right there, negative x plus 3 squared equals 4. Again, the trick in checking our answer is to change the variable into a parentheses before we plug in the values. So I'm going to change this x into a parentheses. So this would come out parentheses negative parentheses plus 3 squared, is that equal to 4? So right now I'm going to plug in 1 to inside the parentheses. So then this would come out negative 1 plus 3 squared, is that equal to 4? Negative 1 plus 3 is a positive 2. And then that's a squared, is that equal to 4? 4 is equal to 4. So that means that x is equal to 1 is a solution to this equation right there. Now let's check if 5 works. So we let x is equal to 5. So then again, the trick is to change the variable into a parenthesis before we plug in the values. So then I'm just going to rewrite it. So the original equation right here is negative x plus 3 squared is equal to 4. So I'm going to change this into a parenthesis. This means that 5 is a solution to this equation right here. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over the problem here. Again, the first step is to isolate the squared expression by itself on one side. And then, as you can see here, there is a negative 4 next to it, so it's not isolated by itself on one side. So what are we going to do is we clear this left side equation up first. So that would be plus 4 to both sides, plus 4. So then we are left with, we can cross this out. That's going to be 2x minus 3 squared is equal to 9. Then we're going to move on to the second step. Square root both sides and break up the equation into two components, the positive and the negative, and then solve. So from here, we are going to square root both sides. Again, once we square root, we put a plus and minus in front of it. So this means that this squared and square root gets crossed out because they are they undo each other. So that means we are left with 2x minus 3 equals plus minus square root of 9 is a positive 3. So then from here, we can break this down into two components. So the first part will get the positive 3. So I'm just going to rewrite it. That would be 2x minus 3 equals positive 3. And then the other solution would come from the equation 2x minus 3 equals, that's a negative 3. So then from here, we solve for x. We add 3 to both sides. And then we can cross the 3 out. We're left with 2x equals 6. We divide both sides by 2. Divide this by 2. So we are left with x is equal to 3. And then we move on to the other equation. So that's going to be plus 3 and plus 3. So this would give us 2x is equal to 0. Then we're dividing 2 from both sides. Divide this by 2. So then our x is 0. So these are the two values of x that will make this equation true. And so we are now ready to move on to the third step. The third step is to check our work. Again, it's very important that we check our work. Sometimes these values may not work. So then we go ahead and check this x equals 3 first. So we let x is equal to 3 and then we rewrite that. So that would be 2x minus 3 squared minus 4. Is that equal to 5? Again, our trick in checking is to change the variable into a parentheses before we plug in the values. So then I will do the math here. I will change this into a parentheses and then plug in the 3 to the parentheses. So as you can see here, 5 is equal to 5, which means that x is equal to 3 is a solution to this equation right here. Now let's move on to x equals to 0. So we let x equals 0 and then we rewrite the equation right there. So that would be 2x minus 3 squared minus 4. Is that equal to 5? So then we change this into a parentheses and plug in the 0. So as you can see here, 5 is equal to 5, which means that this x equals 0 is a solution to this equation up there. Did you get the same answers as this? Good. Perfect. Now let's move on to the next example right here. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. We go over the problem here. Again, the first step is to isolate the squared expression by itself on one side. So we have a 2 in front of it and we have a 3 next to it. So we need to clear this expression out. The 2 and the 3 should be gone on the left side. So then what are we going to do? First is to subtract 3 from both sides, minus 3. So then we are left with 2 parentheses x minus 1 squared is equal to 11 minus 3 is 8. So then we go ahead and divide both sides by 2 because again our target is to have x minus 1 squared by itself on the left side. So divided by 2, we divide this by 2 as well. So then we are left with x minus 1 squared is equal to 4. So then from here, we are going to get rid of the squared by using the square root. So we're going to square root both sides. And remember, when we square root using the square root property, we add plus and minus. So then we can cross the squared and the square root. We are left with x minus 1 equals plus minus 2. So then from here, we go ahead and break this into its two components, the positive and the negative. So that would be x minus 1 equals positive 2. And then the negative component here would be x minus 1 equals negative 2. So both positive and the negative. That's how I got it from here. So then we go ahead and solve for x. So plus 1 and plus 1 from both sides. So we are left with x is equal to 3. So this is the first value of x. And then we go ahead and add 1 to both sides, plus 1 and plus 1. So then we are left with x is equal to negative 1. So these are the two solutions to this equation right here. Now we are ready to move on to the third step. The third step is to check our values that we got from the second step to see if it works to the equation, because sometimes other answers that we've solved, they don't really work. So we go ahead and check this. We let x is equal to 3, and then we write the original equation right here, 2 parentheses x minus 1 squared plus 3 equals 11. Again, the trick in checking our answer if it's correct is to change the variable into parentheses before we plug in values. So we're going to change this into parentheses and then we do the math. So as you can see, 11 is equal to 11, which means that x equals 3 is a solution to this. Now let's check x is equal to negative 1. So we let x is equal to negative 1, and then we write the original equation right there. So 2 parentheses x minus 1 squared plus 3 equals 11. Again, the trick is to change this variable into parentheses before we plug in the values. So then we go ahead and change this to parentheses and do the math. As you can see here, 11 is equal to 11, which means that x is equals negative 1 is a solution to this equation right there. Did you get the same answers as this? Good. Perfect. If you find this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more math videos. See ya!